It's time for a reading wrap up. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Daniela and today we are doing a quarterly reading wrap up. I haven't done one of these since February, so we have March, April and May to cover off in this video. Over the past 3 months I have read 10 books and I'm just going to run through them in the order that I read them, starting with The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. In this book we follow our main character whose name I have already forgotten, and at the beginning of the book she's in a relationship with a man who has her regularly perform acts that she does not enjoy, and said man comes to her with the proposal that he needs to be with other women to make up his mind about whether or not he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. So she reluctantly agrees to an open relationship. Not that she had much choice in the matter. So said man goes off and does his own thing and she's kind of just left to deal with the situation. So what she decides to do is set herself up on a dating app, and she ends up meeting our love interest of this story, who I actually really liked and thought was a very good character. They end up going on a few awkward dates. Initially she plans to just have a one-night stand, but it doesn't work out. She's very nervous, so they end up going on multiple dates in order to attempt their one-night stand that they had planned together. Because of her existing relationship, she does not enjoy doing the deed. It has never been pleasurable for her. So they struggle with the intimacy side of things, and it results in them actually spending time together outside of the bedroom, and a connection and a bond forms. I really enjoyed all this section of the story. I enjoyed them going on their dates, I enjoyed the awkwardness and the situations they ended up in. Where this story lost me is, I think it's about halfway through the book, it suddenly switches from what's supposed to be a contemporary romance to more of a literary fiction based on this character and her family, and sort of the abusive relationship she has with her family. And from that point on, I really struggled with this book. I wanted a romance, that's not what I got. I didn't like how the rest of the book went. It just fell completely flat for me, and so I only give this book 3 stars. Next up, I read A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which is a sequel to A Psalm for the Wild Built. Now, I loved A Psalm for the Wild Built. I gave it 5 stars. The sequel, however, it just wasn't there for me. It was still a lovely read. I still enjoyed it. It just didn't hit me in the feels the same way that the first book did. I really related to the first book. It had a lot of stuff in there, and I think I read it at a time where it really resonated with me. So the first book is 5 stars, loved it, would read it again. This book I only give 3 stars, but I did still enjoy it. It just did not have that same emotional connection for me that the first book did. I am aware, however, that some people connect more with the second book than the first book, so I would still recommend both of these books to anyone who is looking for a cozy fantasy / sci-fi. This is a sci-fi, but same vibes, cozy fantasy, cozy sci-fi, with a little bit of human analysis thrown in there. Just very enjoyable characters. Next up, I read The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie Oh. This is my very late edition, which I did read, and I gave this one 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed this story. Way more than I was expecting to, and I'm so glad because this edition is absolutely beautiful. In this book we follow Mina, and in Mina's village they have a tradition where they sacrifice a bride to the sea god, and the sacrifice this time is her brother's wife. Mina sees how upset her brother is by this, and she ends up sacrificing herself instead, which results in her travelling to the sea god's realm. I really enjoyed the characters in this. This book contains the found family trope, which I really enjoy. It did get a couple of tears out of me. It was really cute and whimsical. It is a retelling of a Korean legend. It is YA, but I feel like it gave off like magical bedtime story vibe. If you like whimsical reads, I would recommend this. Next, I read Some Mistakes Were Made by Kristen Dwyer. This is a YA contemporary book. It's kind of romance / family drama. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, and it starts out with one of those plots where something has already happened, but you don't know what that thing is. It kind of alludes to it throughout the book, but you don't know what's happened. And it follows 2 separate timelines. One is current timeline and one is past timeline. So you're kind of getting flashbacks leading up to what happened, and current timeline where things are a little bit weird because of the thing that happened. I was a bit underwhelmed with the reveal of the dramatic thing that had happened, and throughout the story I did find myself a little bit bored. I just think this one wasn't really for me, but it wasn't a bad read. Next, I picked up Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I picked this up because I have watched the first season of the television series and I was interested to see if there was a little bit more to the relationship between Alina and the Darkling, just because of things I had seen said online and hype around the Darkling. Suffice to say, there's nothing more to it. The Darkling for me is just not it. I don't really understand the hype around the Darkling, and this book was not great. I like the history and information surrounding the world that you got from reading this book, especially because I also read Six of Crows, but we'll talk about that in a moment. I do think this book was a necessary read to enjoy the rest of the Grishaverse books because it explains a lot of stuff, but it was a little bit boring. I did put that down to the fact that maybe it's because I'd already seen the TV show and knew roughly what would happen. But then I picked up Seige and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, which is the second book in this series. I think the writing is just not good in these books. This one I was a little bit more interested during the first half of the book. A new character was introduced who I enjoyed, and we had a lot more action and adventure, but then it very quickly started to go downhill again. It got very boring. I actually gave this one 2 stars. Next up, I read an advanced reader copy of North Ranger, which is a YA graphic novel that is due out in June. The back of this says for fans of Bloom, Heartstopper, and Jane Austen's gothic romance Northanger Abbey. In this graphic novel we follow our main character Cade, who is an avid fan of watching horror films, and he ends up going to work on this ranch for the summer, and there he meets another teenage boy who lives on the ranch, and he's also into horror films, so they kind of bond over that. And the story kind of follows these 2 characters and their relationship, but it also has this underlying mystery aspect. Henry, who is our other character, is keeping a secret, and Cade, as an avid horror fan, lets his mind run away with itself trying to figure out what this secret is that Cade is keeping. There have been some mysterious deaths, and one of the workers on the ranch keeps dropping little bits of information to Cade. He starts to become very suspicious of Henry and Henry's family. I gave this book 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It did make me cry. There is some triggering stuff in here. Some of the trigger warnings include homophobia, misogyny, racism, domestic violence, animal cruelty, and confronting death. So just be aware of those before you pick this one up, but I give it 5 stars. The finished format will be in this 2-tone colour with the oranges and blacks. I do recommend this one. Next up, I read a new release, and that is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I love TJ Klune's books. I've read The House in the Cerulean Sea, I gave that 5 stars, and I've read Under the Whispering Door, which I'm pretty sure I gave 4 stars. This one I also gave 4 stars. This is more along those cozy sci-fi lines again. It's got a bunch of funny, interesting characters who end up going on a little bit of an adventure. It's just a really fun time. I love TJ Klune's writing. He just makes the most heartwarming stories with the funniest characters. Next up, I read Still Beating by Jennifer Hartmann. This is a dark romance, and I was not expecting to like this. The first chapter of this book starts with our character Cora, who is at a bar with her sister and her sister's fiance, who she cannot stand. Her sister and fiance end up leaving. She stays behind at the bar for a little while, and then when it comes to going home for the evening, she realizes she's lost her purse and she can't call a taxi. So she tries ringing for a bunch of people in her phone, eventually lands on Dean, who is her sister's fiance, who she cannot stand, and asks him for a lift home. While she's waiting for him to come and collect her, some creepy dude starts talking to her, and the guy is described from Cora's perspective as a John Wayne Gacy lookalike. Immediately off-putting. Dean turns up to pick her up, and she gets in the car with Dean, and they end up driving off. On their way home, a car appears behind them, which appears to be undercover police officers. You may be able to guess where this is going. They pull over. It's not the police. It is our friend from outside of the bar, and they both end up being taken by this man, and the story progresses from there. Huge trigger warning in this book for rape. I think the first third of the book is a lot, so if that is a trigger for you, do not touch this book. Do not go near it. Don't even look at it. This is one of the stories where there is a lot of trauma, but then there is also the healing side. And in the middle of all that, somehow, there is a romance that I ended up enjoying. I can't explain it. I was shocked. This book was actually very addictive, very easy to read, kept you interested. I wanted to know what's going to happen next. It was very good at keeping you on your toes, and I did really enjoy it, and I'm definitely looking forward to trying more dark romances now, especially when I didn't think I was going to like this. So that was my 4-star dark romance surprise of the quarter. And the last book I read in May was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I gave this 4 stars. It didn't quite reach that 5-star mark just because I did spend a portion of the book a little bit bored. It took me a while to get into this, and I do feel like it took too long to get to the main heist. There is definitely a lull somewhere towards the center of the book, but once you get into the main heist, it is very hard to put this book down. It keeps you on your toes, it is exciting, it is invigorating. It's one of those books where you're like, from chapter to chapter, you're just like, I need to know what happens next. It was a heart-thumping thrill ride. Really enjoyed the characters in this. The found family aspect, the way they ended up melding together by the end of this was just so good. The heist was amazing, really well thought out, all made complete and utter sense to me. And there were so many twists and so many things I wasn't expecting. I just really enjoyed this. It was so good. This feels like it's written by a different author entirely. Shadow and Bone has nothing on Six of Crows. I now totally understand the hype around this book. I understand why people are obsessed with it. It's so good. I'm currently reading Crooked Kingdom, another 4-star read. Just missed that 5-star rating. I think I would reread this. So that was all the books I've read over the last 3 months. Let me know what you think, guys. Have you read any of these? Did you enjoy them? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Almost lost my cool there.
Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.